Hello everybody, welcome to Idiot Gear. I'm Chewy and today we're going to be removing a water pump from a Saab 900, although it's very similar on a Saab 93. And you can see this is the water pump over here, and we're going to try and remove it today and swap it with a new one, because this one's broken, it's leaking. Okay, so first we have to remove the air filter because it's kind of in the way here. It's quite simple. We remove all these little metal clips and we can pop this off. We unplug this and we remove this, and then there's just a couple of bolts and then it just comes right out. Next we have to detension this belt so that we can remove it, which is quite simple. You just stick a 1/2 inch something in this square hole over there, and then you can tighten it or de-tighten it by pulling or pushing. What you do is you pull it forward like this, and then you can slot something real quick between these holes to prevent it from sliding back and going back under tension. And now you can see that this is real loose and can just be pulled off. Here you can see a more accurate picture of the belt that we just removed, or that we detensioned over here, except that ours has an extra pulley over here that it goes around, so it goes like that instead of straight here. And that's that pulley over there. This one. We only really need to remove this from this pulley over here. This is the pulley for your power steering. This provides the power for your power steering pump, and we need to remove this power steering pump because the water pump for the coolant is underneath. And remove this. There's 2 bolts. There's one on this side. This one is nice and easy access, and there's another one which is there. You can see it. You have to go through the hole here in the pulley, and then there's also like a little pin kind of thing halfway, and that's just popping it off. This is just too long because we hear one of the brackets for the air filter, and without it it's just too short and we don't actually reach all the way. It is literally like 2 millimeters off or something. Very annoying. Basically you have to use a slightly longer one to access it. Okay, so we have this, we loosen it and we moved it a little bit to the side. We don't want to remove all these pipes and stuff because then we have to get new steering liquid or something, and we don't want to do that. Next off we have this pipe though. So we've loosened this tube by loosening this little screw here, and that loosens this metal bracket. And now we want to remove the metal tube that comes out of the hose, and it goes like back here and then all the way to here. So we need to remove this bracket and this bracket down here. So let's get to it. And as you can see, when you remove the tube, the Saab bleeds. Next up we have to remove this big pipe here. This comes from the radiator to the water pump. We want to remove it because it's attached to the water pump and we want to remove the water pump. So this is just like all the other pipes, has a little screw. You need to unscrew that untightens this bracket, and then you can push it out. So we've removed the first 2 bolts, which are the 2 bolts that are here and here, and then if we look, they have these 2 bolts which we just removed, but there's also a bolt at the bottom, and that's quite difficult to reach at the moment. So what you can do is you can remove the Saab mud panels on the side here, and then you start to have access to more Saabness. Very simply is 3 bolts, one up here, one down here, and one at the bottom over there. And then apparently a zip tie as well, so probably 4 bolts, except they just use the zip tie here. Here at the front you basically have to remove this whole bumper panel, which means bolts here, back there, and then 2 bolt holes here, and then one more over there. So here we have different bolts. This is the bottom bolt. As you can see, it has just a 10mm head. Is the exact same length and thickness though. So It might be either bolt that they put down there, to be honest. Now you can see this is loose. However, we still have this second tube that goes here, this pipe, and it needs to be pulled out, but it's kind of difficult because there's not a lot of space. So you just have to kind of shimmy it back and forth. It's attached here with a rubber O-ring, of which there is not very much left anymore, and then it just goes in this hole, and it's just kind of tight, so you have to shimmy it around. Everything is tight on this Saab because it's dirty and badly maintained. Since we bought it, it is slightly better maintained. I think it has more maintenance than ever in its life. But yeah, this is the old water pump. Well, the old water pump plus the cover on the one side, and that's the new water pump. So you just have to remove all of these screws, and then we're set. Now inside, since we don't need to be outside, I'd rather be inside where I'm less likely to lose all of my screws. And it's also nice if you have a vise, because you might notice this kind of spins. So if I start spinning here, I'm going to create a torque and just going to spin this thing around. So we're just going to put it in this vise and then prevent it from spinning. So there we go, it's in the vise, can't spin. Well, the bomb can spin, but that's just the pulley. And you just have to remove all of these torque screws around it, and then you can just remove the panel. So I've removed the 7 bolts, here they are, and then there we go. It should just pop right off. So you can see this is a channelless cover we're going to keep, and this pump itself we're going to replace. I personally don't actually need to replace it, but like all the O-rings are broken and leaky, and I thought why not, because there's probably some wear and tear on this thing as well, and it's just nice to have a new one. So we found probably the issue with that the coolant was leaking. This is from the water pump that we removed, and yeah, it is completely brittle and hard. It just breaks into like that. Plus it was in the spot where the leak was coming from, so I think it's pretty accurate to guess that that was the problem. If you're reusing the cover like we are, don't forget to remove all the old O-rings, because look at this consistency, is pure hardness. This as well. And then this is one of the new O-rings, and it's just like an elastic band. It's so much suppler, and this will actually block water. This will just kind of sit there in the way and break. Remove is the old gasket, which is often very stuck, so you're going to need like a steel brush and some sandpaper and stuff to get this all nice and smooth. Although, of course, this would be on the cover and not on this, because we have a replacement one. First things first, we have to reattach the 2 halves of the water pump, or well, attach the old cover to the new water pump, and to do that we have this gasket. However, first we're going to put a little bit of like a liquid gasket around here so that they stick together well, and the same on this one over here. This here is liquid sealant, and we're going to put a little bit on here just before we put on the gasket, so that the gasket sticks on a bit better, and we also degrease this surface, because else the liquid sealant doesn't stick properly, and we also degrease the other side. We spread a little bit of this liquid gasket, and then just with your finger just kind of spread it out. As you can see, we now have like a nice layer of liquid sealant all around, and we can start putting on this gasket. Here is the other side, same sealant, same procedure as before, and we're just gonna put it on in the way that it's supposed to go, which is like this. And make sure to line up all the holes properly, because else the screws aren't going to fit. And now we put in the screws. Just put them in slightly on each side and then tighten them in a crisscross pattern. So we cleaned up the screws a bit because they were a bit covered in gunk, and now they're just slightly rusty but not super gunky anymore. So they hopefully won't mess with the gasket, and you just put them in and tighten them a little bit. and then later we'll be tightening them all crisscross around. So there we go, everything has been tightened up. So this one, then 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 this one. Just tighten them all up, and there we go. It is ready to go back almost. We still need to put the O-rings in. There are 4 O-rings. 2 of them are the same size, and one is larger, and one is the very small fat one that goes in the tube that comes from the side. So you definitely need this one. You definitely need one of the medium ones. And depending on which type of water pump you have and how large the tubes are, you're either going to need the larger one or the medium one. We don't need the larger one, we need the 2 medium ones. So you're only going to need 3 of these, and you're going to have to check which one is which. So the 2 O-rings you put on this little part that comes off the back of the water pump. So depending on how you removed it, this part either was like stuck on here, or it was still stuck in the engine. So you're gonna have to pull on this tab here and this tab here to get it out of either the engine or this thing down here, and that's where the 2 medium size or the large and the medium size go, depending on what kind of shape this thing is. This other O-ring is all shiny and greased up, and then you see this tube over here. Right here is where it just kind of pops on. Well, I'll push it into place. There you can see it's just nice and tight up against this ridge, and then eventually we'll pop this whole thing into the water pump. So this is now the part that goes into the engine, and this opening has to go like this towards the left side of the car if you're looking from the driver's seat. So basically, if you're facing the engine like this, you have to keep it this orientation so that it sprays all its water into the engine instead of against the engine wall that way. That flap has to go underneath this ridge that's kind of there to make sure that you orient the thing correctly and not up or down or the wrong way around. So now it's time to put the new water pump in, and basically it goes like that. You can see you just kind of push it in, and when it's in the right position you push this side pipe in as well. You just kind of push it that way and then it's fine. So now you have to reattach all the bolts. So that's this bracket here, this bracket here, then the 2 bolts that go up here, so one here and one here, and then also the one that is like underneath there somewhere, just the bottom of the water pump. And then we go reattach all the hoses and stuff. Reattached these 2 hoses, we can move on to the power steering pump. Power steering pump was 1 big bolt that goes like this, going from that side this way, and 1 small bolt that goes over here. But first we need to pop the power steering pump into place. While trying to put the power steering pump back in, you might struggle a bit because it won't fit between these 2 brackets. That's because there's a bushing here that you need to hammer out a little bit, because when you tighten the screw, this will tighten, keeping it from moving. First we tighten this one at the top and then the one at the bottom, because when you tighten this one, the bushing is going to push the entire pump this way a little bit, so if you tighten it at the bottom already, it's going to kind of tilt, and that's not good. The final thing is the belt over here. Now we're going to do a quick limited visibility. Here we have the picture again, and goes up around here, it goes around this middle sprocket, then it goes up here, then it goes around one that is down there at the bottom, you can sort of see, then it comes back up, goes around this very silver shiny one, goes back down around that bottom one, and then it comes back up over the water pump we just installed, and then back again power steering pump, and then it continues. If we look from down here below, this is the lowest one. So it goes up from here, goes around, comes back down, goes around, up there, comes back down, goes around, and then there, and then it comes back down. Now that we've fixed all the belts, it's to go put these covers back on. So that's this one and this other one. Just pop it back on. It's the same screw, so just hold these screw holes. Just gotta put these little screws back on. Now there's one screw, at least on mine, that's a 10, and that's specifically this one. The rest are all just 8mm screws. So now finally we need to retighten it. You remember our nice little stop gap over here. Just plug a 1/2 inch in here, and we hold it, we remove the stop gap, and then we push it back into position to tighten all these pieces. You can see now that the two holes are no longer lined up, and this band is nice and tight. Not gonna get it off any of these sprockets. Now finally, of course, there's still one thing missing. The air filter needs to be put back in. Filter back in here. It has 3 brackets that you basically need to tighten it around. That is one over here, one down there, and one over here. It's the same ones you loosen to get it off. Final part is to reattach the top of this air filter, which goes around this bad boy here, and then you just pop it on here, and there's a bunch of these little metal clips that you need to clip over these. And of course, don't forget to tighten this back up as well. And finally, this is our little like air filter measuring plug. We plug it in, and then we're done. You can just start the car and take a look. And now we of course have to add coolant again, because if you remember, a whole bunch of coolant leaked out when we removed the hoses. So we need to fill it back up.